So you can't win even when you win sometimes as an agent. It's one of those, insurance is one of those things people hate to pay for, but they hope when they need it, they have the right coverage. And the percentages of people actually using it is not everybody uses their insurance. So it's
Yeah. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Living Albuquerque. Today, we're continuing our behind-the-scenes look at what really goes on in a real estate transaction. This is a piece that becomes more important and honestly a little more complicated in recent years, which is homeowners insurance. If you bought a home before, you might remember insurance being fairly straightforward, but today it's a little bit different. There are more questions, more requirements, and in some cases, higher cost. So I thought it'd be really helpful to bring in someone who can walk us through what's changed, what people need to know, and how to navigate that insurance. That's why I'm so happy to have Mike Tejas joining me today. Mike is an account executive with Washington Federal Insurance Group here in Albuquerque, and he brings really unique perspective to this conversation. Because in addition to working as an insurance broker, Mike is also a licensed real estate broker and was previously a RE/MAX franchise owner. He understands this process from multiple angles, as is one of the many reasons I work with him and appreciate him. I think Mike's perspective is incredibly valuable to my customers because insurance doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's a key part of overall real estate experience. When my customers ask me an insurance question, I don't know, Mike is my resource. So Mike, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see you. We don't get to see each other very often.
In this world of text.
Right?
Yeah.
Which I'm grateful for, but yeah, absolutely. It's good to sit down together. So before you jump into details of the insurance, I'd love for viewers to get to know you a little, because the podcast is really about the people who make Albuquerque what it is and and different perspectives that everyone brings to it. So tell me a little bit about your story. Are you from Albuquerque originally?
No, originally born in California, but been in Albuquerque for 50 years. So at 52, I've been here almost all my life.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of us that, weren't born here, but it's like we're definitely New Mexican.
Most definitely. Especially when you leave and come back, you realize, okay, I like these things different.
Yeah, really. Then you get a different perspective and appreciation for sure.
Right.
So what led you into both real estate and insurance, and which came first, real estate or insurance?
Well, what came first is I was a mortgage broker.
Oh, okay.
So
I was all the things.
Yeah. I was a mortgage broker and started off in the late 90s as a subprime lender, which I was part of the problem. I would, I guess, not knowingly in the mid 2000s of those subprime loans. I learned that's how I originally started. And then I came in and got an opportunity to work as a mortgage broker and learning the other side of business, being able to work with different clientele. And two, whether it be insurance or real estate came first. I was trying to break in with realtors. And as a lender, it was very difficult because they already had their preferred people. And, it was weird, kind of a weird market in the early 2000s. Things were just a little bit different. I became a realtor. And because of my lending experience, I was able to, back then, I could go directly for a qualifying broker's license. So that's what I did.
Oh.
And then insurance came in a couple of years later. I found the value of to go work for a brokerage, another franchise. They were the only ones that would hire me part-time to learn the business. I worked there for 6 months to a year. And then I went and opened my own real estate brokerage, Complete Realty, because at that time I was doing mortgage, real estate, and then we had opened up an Allstate agency. So I was a captive agent for Allstate. And then I met another RE/MAX franchisee in town. Her and I were friends, and she tried to get me to work for her. And then I said, well, I'd rather just open my own. So I met with RE/MAX and opened that franchise in 2000.
Wow, that's super ambitious to go straight into the business and open up your own brokerage.
Yeah, it was a learning curve.
But here you are.
You're right.
So what did you learn from being a RE/MAX franchise owner?
I learned from being the franchise owner. One thing I did learn is name recognition was good. Being part of a big brokerage, big firm was nice because when I had my generic little company, people wouldn't recognize my signs. It didn't have the push that you did, but having that big franchise, the Remax kind of mentality was you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. You have a team behind you, a brand. Sorry, what was the rest of the question?
And that's just what you learned from having a Remax franchise.
Having a Remax, I learned basically the importance of your agents and giving them the ability to be their own boss, talking them through the process. Understanding that my role was more of a confidant and a more like a coach leader type, showing them, call me if there's a problem, but they're pretty independent. Remax agents are for the most part. They like to be on their own. They like to run their own business. So just being that guide for them is what I learned the most in working with basically other like-minded business owners, because that's to me, that's a Remax agent.
For sure. I do think that there's a level of professionalism and experience that comes with being a Remax agent for sure. A little more seasoned, and you're not out there. You're, like you said, you're definitely your own business, but you're not necessarily out there by yourself. Had I known what Remax would do for me and for my business, I would have joined it years ago. I mean, I became a Remax agent in 2019, but yeah. So fill in the Remax love. So what's the difference between an insurance broker like yourself and an agent with an insurance company, like when you were with Allstate?
So as Allstate, whether you're what's called a captive agent, a lot of the big brands are that way, like a State Farm or Farmers, USAA. They're not. What that means is they only write their products. So anything that they have, that's all they have access to. The nice part about being a broker is I have access to several products. We write a version of Allstate. We write a version of Farmers. We write, not State Farm, but we'll write the Travelers, the Progressives, the Liberty Mutual. So we have options. So whenever depending on, and they all have different rules, different guidelines, but for the most part, they're all the same in a sense. We just are able to give our clients that option. Do you remember the Progressive commercial that would show, and it would have like ding, 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 all the different prices of all the different companies? In a sense, that's what we do. We have a rating system that allows us to run quotes through all the carriers to see who has the best rate. And then we kind of evaluate coverages, who has the best combination of the two for each client.
Awesome. So I know we talked to Jerry Tomasi a few episodes ago, and she's a mortgage broker as opposed to a mortgage banker. And it sounds like it's very much the same. It's like, instead of just having like certain policies you can write or just like certain loans for a bank, you get to shop all the ones that you have a relationship with, that you can write for, essentially.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm trying to think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think I have 3 policies with you. I have Travelers when I was, having trouble with the fire area. I now have a Progressive with you.
Yes.
And then I also have a Safeco, I think. So I have 3. So you've really helped me out with, keeping it low for me and keeping me well insured for the best price. And it is. I'm like thinking, it's like, yeah. And it's great because all I have to do is go to you. I don't have to like hunt that down. And yeah. And I recently, it doesn't matter, but I was going to say I had an agent with my primary residence that retired. And now I'm with somebody, I don't even know who they are. I don't even know their name.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. We at our agency, we push customer service still, even though we're in a technology world. We try to reach out. We try to be, I tell the team, we want to be, if anybody could be an agent, anybody could write a policy. You could go online and get a policy, but very few are consultants. So we try to evaluate the situation and just give good advice, whether we get the policy or not. At least hopefully it was a good experience for the client and we were able to guide them in the right way.
Yeah, for sure. I always appreciate your responsiveness and your team as well. They're just, and you're always positive. Like, I don't know anybody else that could have given me bad news. All of a sudden being in a fire area in a short-term rental where my insurance was like crazy, getting over doubled and everything. And you actually like, I don't know if I would have been as nice to anybody else, but you were just really sweet. I know it's not your fault. I know it's not their fault, but it was just like, oh my God.
And it's been like that. I mean, it's been tough. So, the fire scores in this state have all been re-rated. Fire zones have all been re-rated. So it's a difficult, we have a lot of difficult, it's been what they call a hard market for a few years. And it's kind of, we're hoping to see it seems like it's softening up, but in a hard market, the carriers are like, this is our guidelines. They tighten everything down. It's just very difficult and prices just continue to go up. And it's tough. It's a lot of tough conversation.
Yeah, no, you really helped me. I mean, just as a personal experience, it was like there was a carrier that I was switching to. And then the next thing I know, when they went out, oh, you need to change your fencing within 5 feet of the house. They wanted me to take out 3 like old growth ponderosa pines. And it's like, that adds value. I mean, that honestly, that was one of my draws to that property with those 3 big trees in the yard. And it's like, I don't want to kill those trees. And so, yeah, so you helped me out and got me something better, actually. So I was going to ask you about your experience with the market and everything right now, but it sounds like, if you have anything else to elaborate, it sounds like that is quite a bit of what you're going through, is trying to like figure out the fire insurance areas, which we're seeing in Santa Fe, and what other areas, and not all of Santa Fe, right?
Yeah, Santa Fe is a very tough market, so I feel bad for homeowners there. Equally tough is, believe it or not, Albuquerque stuff. We're starting to see non-renewals. So what they did was they remapped it. So a couple years ago, we had those big fires up north. A lot of the carriers, we had a combination of things. The COVID issue, and not to blame COVID because it seems like the easy low-hanging fruit, but the truth is, prior to COVID, construction costs were pretty steady. Your homeowner's policy has an inflation guard built into it. So whenever we run a home quote, oftentimes I work with lots of new referral business from mortgage companies or realtors, and the clients will say, "Hey, I'm under contract at 300,000, 400, whatever the number is." Mm-hmm. And the insurance value comes in. We take the square footage, we take the finishes on the home, we take all those things and put it into the computer, age of home, and then it spits out a number. Mm-hmm. And the number that comes out is the replacement cost. They're not really worried about what you're paying for the house. They're worrying about rebuilding the house. Mm-hmm. So that number doesn't always match up. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. Like in Santa Fe, where you'll have maybe a $2 million house that's, say, 3,500 square feet. The insurable value on that house might only be 1.2, depending on the finishes or whatever. That's an example. So trying to explain and make sure that we have the proper coverages in place. What COVID did was it shot at construction costs. So we had a lot of people on the books prior to those fires that may have been insured at 200,000, and the replacement cost is now 300,000 or 250. So they're short on the coverages. So then what the underwriters did is they said, okay, there's safety features built into the policy. You have extended coverage and things like that do help close the gap. Mm-hmm. But it happened so rapidly that in some cases, a lot of people were underinsured all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. And then you put in a big fire, and all of a sudden insurance companies are losing. And so what they did was they reevaluated the maps. So that's been the difficult part, is now we're seeing replacement costs coming a lot higher. We're seeing certain zones, like I had a client recently in the Northeast Heights, west of Tramway by a couple blocks, get non-renewed because of a fire score. Mm-hmm. And we're like, hey, that's the city. They were not in the mountains. So those are the kinds of challenges that we're seeing and having to overcome.
Is there any recourse, like, in that sense, like even though they're in a fire rated area, I mean, is there a way to send somebody out and say, look, even though they're in a fire rated area, the danger's low?
It depends on the carrier. So what we like is a lot of my carriers that we represent, we have designated underwriters. That's good. That's an advantage too to the captive agents. A lot of times they'll have a dedicated. We have a couple dedicated underwriters, which are nice. So we can sometimes they'll allow us to go out to the property, send photos, send them in, and it depends on the carrier. Some carriers are like, sorry, hard line here. So in this particular case, we had to rewrite the policy with another carrier. We were able to find him better pricing. And then it's kind of like, why didn't you do that before? So you can't win even when you win.
Yeah.
So as an agent, it's one of those, insurance is one of those things people hate to pay for, but they hope when they need it, they have the right coverage.
For sure.
And the percentages of people actually using it is, not everybody uses their insurance. So it's hard.
Yeah. And it's funny when you say that. I was like, oh, thank goodness they have you, because like if they were just with one company, then they would have to start calling and finding somebody else that was going to go through that, where you handle all that. So
yep, we've seen a lot of that. We get a lot of phone calls, especially East Mountain. So East Mountain, Santa Fe are kind of similar as far as difficulty. Parts of the Valley, the Rio Grande area, and the cottonwood trees, we've had $2 million houses that the people are buying, and the company says, we want you to cut all the trees within 100 feet. So That some carriers are still like that.
Yeah.
And what's hard too is what we try to do is we try to do aerials, live aerials with the carrier sites. The tools we have with the carriers, we can pull up live pictures, fairly live pictures of the roof. We try to do an underwriting, pre-underwrite, and so that way when policy is issued, so insurance carriers have 60 days to get off of a policy that they issue.
Mm-hmm.
So if they buy a house on March 31st, April 1st, they got the insurance. And what we're seeing a lot of carriers do is within 30 days, sometimes they'll do a separate inspection.
Mm-hmm.
Not like the home inspection that's already been done. It's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for liability exposure for the most part. And then they can still cancel the policy. So that's why it's important when your clients are purchasing a home that they talk to an agent right away and kind of find out what's going on with the property. So with my real estate background,
Mm-hmm.
I've got access to the MLS because I'm a realtor.
Mm-hmm.
So I can pull those properties up. What I try to do is I'll dig into like maybe an old seller's disclosures from previous sales where they had a little bit more information.
Mm-hmm.
You may get that roof date, then you may get some more information. So just trying to pull from the resources. That way it's a smooth transaction. Once we issue the policy, there's not as much fallout on the backside.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, that is really good information. Yeah, because it's so essentially, so up to like 30 to 60 days after a person like closes on a property or switches insurance carriers, they may have an adjuster or somebody who works for the insurance company go do like a drive-by or actually walk around the property.
Correct.
Okay.
They'll do that. They do that. A lot of times they'll do like an aerial. So what we look at in the biggest issue. So not a lot of companies are really familiar with flat roof homes. Believe it or not. I mean, we're one of the few states that has a lot of it. You know, a lot of people move here for that look. They love the look. It's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So common things that we'll see is it's a very simple fix. So what happens, you have a flat TPO roof, which is typically white for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have like a slight rainstorm, and then you have the winds. What does the white roof look like? It's going to have dust on it. It's going to have ponding or whatever you call it in an area. Doesn't mean the roof's bad, but what happens sometimes is you're dealing with somebody who's East Coast, whatever coast, not familiar with a flat roof. They see a big brown stain in the middle of a flat roof and they think it needs a bath. It's a bath. So those are the things that we try to educate and talk about, So what we'll do as part of our underwriting process, like if you have a buyer call me up and we run a quote, the girls will do the aerials on it. We'll see. And so things that a realtor might be looking for in a home inspection, like they might say, hey, your water heater's at the end of life or your furnace is, end of life. It's typical conversation, electrical, this or that. We're looking and we're saying, hey, see those branches that are overhanging the roof? I would get those trimmed. Those are the little things that a carrier is going to look at and they'll either cancel you for or non-renew you potentially for. Or we'll say, hey, you see this elevated concrete 2-3 inches walking to the front door, that's going to be an issue with you. So we look at those sort of things. So a trip and fall, because your homeowner's insurance doesn't just protect your house for fire or burglary or wind and hail, it protects you for liability. So your dog bites somebody trips and falls on your property, things that you have, if you're walking up the 3 steps to your front door and your railing is loose or missing, those are things that insurance companies look for.
Okay. Oh, that's all good to know for sure. And I like that. I didn't know this. I didn't know that you were doing aerials and looking at these things. And that is good because that's one thing I always talk about is like, if you see, because inspectors do, but seeing tree limbs, like within 2 feet of the roof, it's going to, scrape and cause issues and things like that. So yeah. Yeah. And cracks and sidewalks and driveways and things like that usually aren't an issue. It's when they're raised.
But I mean, if it's a bigger, to potentially like could be other issues, but yeah, for the most part, it's raised trip hazards.
Okay.
Trip hazards, falls, anything that could cause a trip and fall, that you could then be, found responsible for. Oftentimes, it's like, like I say, dog bites. We don't have a lot of carriers anymore that have. They used to be breed restrictions. Some companies still hold on to that, and they're mainly broad stroked, aggressive breeds.
Mhm.
Historically, not necessarily your dog, but it's just, it falls under that, but we don't see those as much. They're starting to loosen up on those. They're just looking for maybe a bite history, if the dog's bit anybody, that sort of thing. Because those are liability claims that come in as well. So when you're writing your getting your insurance, a homeowner's policy, regardless of the value that the insurable value that comes in or your dwelling coverage, those policies typically default to, they come with $100,000 in liability.
Mhm.
We try to write everything with 500
Mhm.
because the difference between the 300 and the 500 is maybe $30, $40 a year. After that extra insurance, that's where sometimes you'll see those liability claims can really pay out. That's as an agency standard, that's usually insurance.
Okay. I don't think I've ever asked you this before. Do you do liability umbrella insurance as well?
We do. We
Okay.
do.
All right. Gotta get
Yep.
a quote. Yeah.
Liability umbrella. And it's, I always try to look at, I want to make sure you have good liability limits standalone. And then depending on the whole risk base, umbrellas are always good. The more exposure you have, the more expensive it's going to be, but it's definitely not a bad idea, especially for asset protection.
For sure. Okay. So we are seeing, talking to agents around the country, brokers, agents around the country. I'm seeing that, and I'm seeing this is U.S. wide. Like insurance companies are asking questions they didn't go in depth to before, like age of roof, plumbing,
Yeah.
electrical. I mean, we're just seeing a lot more of those questions, and it's, I would say, really strongly like the last year, especially. And
Mhm.
sometimes, and so how, number one, why? And number two, like, what do you do? Like, sometimes you have a person that's on a home for like 4 or 5 years, right?
Mhm.
They bought the house, they had inspected the roof was okay, but they don't actually know the age of it. And I'm hearing, and of course this could be different, that most insurance companies now want a roof that's within 10 years.
So what
And
part of that hard market with the fire scores has every neighborhood in town has had getting flooded with a roofer with hail damage. I mean, over the years, it just seems to be the thing. During COVID, companies they were just sending checks. They would say, I have hail damage, roofer here. They weren't doing the inspections, going in, and a lot of stuff happened. And not to say that they didn't have hail damage. It was really common practice. It seemed like a lot of companies were doing. So what happens is that led to, you take fires, you take wind, hail claims, those sort of things, throw it onto the pot. You have these companies running in the red for a few years. What they did was a lot of them tightened up. So, for example, I have one carrier that used to do anything, right? Home wise, age wasn't an issue. They changed in the last 5 years. They went from writing a lot of business at a fair rate to increasing rates to we only write houses that are 5 years old and newer to we only write new construction to we no longer write homes because they were trying to balance out their book. That's just one example. But a lot of the companies, and then so we had several that were flat roof was 10 years. They didn't want a flat roof over 10 years.
Mhm.
And a pitched roof was 15.
Mhm.
That's starting to loosen up. We're starting to see companies do a couple different things. Typically, your homeowner's policy comes with the replacement cost coverage on the roof. So you can have a roof, that's 10 years old. They're gonna go in, it's $15,000 to replace. They're gonna replace it minus your deductible. Now some companies are doing a depreciation factor.
Mhm.
So, okay, your roof is 10 years old, so it's only worth this much to replace. This is our portion. So we're starting to see things like that. We're starting to see deductibles increase. So they're loosening up to where they're saying, okay, we'll go to 15, 20, 25 years. Tile roof is like 40 for a lot of carriers, 30 to 40 years, depending on the carrier. So they're kind of, what they're doing now is they're opening it back up but they are changing the deductibles. So you'll start seeing a lot of companies will tell you that your wind hail deductible is no longer, if you have a standard, say $1,000 deductible, it might now be $2,500, $1,500, things like that. So we're starting to see it. What they're looking to do is trying to balance it out with the homeowner or the policyholder having a little bit more skin in the game. And in my opinion, insurance is turning towards more of a catastrophic policy,
Okay.
something big,
So probably gone are the days of my roof is 30 years old. It has hail damage. Replace it.
Is all truly hail damage, then you're good. But gone are the days are prime example. Back 40 years ago, 45 years ago, our parents were like, you get insurance, you keep your deductible low because if you need something, they're going to pay it out. And it's kind of like people used it more like a maintenance plan.
Mhm.
My opinion on insurance is I'm a high deductible, better coverage person. So my house burns down. I want to make sure that I've got the right coverage.
Mhm.
If I need a roof, I have the right coverage. If I need, my car's full. I've had clients call me up and they're like, hey, my house got broke into and they stole $3,000 worth of stuff. I'm like, oh, that's a tough spot, I look at it and I always ask people, what's your threshold for paying on deductible? Like, how much are you comfortable paying out of pocket? Because, now we have a theft claim if you want it. Your deductible's $1,000. You might get, who knows, another $1,000. So I always encourage people, they have the right to do whatever they want to do. I just try to consult them on how it's going to affect them. Because in the claims, they stick on there for 5 years. You're now losing discounts and prorated. So there's just a lot of tough spots. It's just hard. So that's why I like high deductible. Because I'm like, okay, if it's less than this, I'm not going to worry about it. A lot of my clients seem to feel the same way.
Mhm.
But then again, there's some people who can't afford a high deductible. They want to make sure they'd rather pay monthly on a smaller amount. So it all depends on the customer.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay. So sometimes it's better not to make a claim if it's
I think it's always great to consult with your agent, understand your coverage. I mean, I would say I wouldn't even be able to guess the percentage of people that actually know who their agent is or know what their policy covers. Most people think when you're selling a house, most people, for the most part, residential real estate, they're excited because they're envisioning themselves in the home. They're envisioning their kids going to that school, or they're envisioning the neighborhood this, or whatever it is, it's theirs.
Mhm.
They don't care about what their insurance is. They care about what their payment. This is my house. This is my payment. And that's the way things have always been sold. It's like, okay, here you go. So I think I would like to see people, understand that, hey, not only is this where we're going to raise our family or where we're going to grow or the rest of our life or spend this time or whatever the situation is, how do I protect it? And I think that's a better conversation. You have options. You could do this, and this is what it would be, and this is going to suffice the mortgage. All the mortgage company cares about is that it covers fire. They don't care about. They don't care about your unless you're in a flood zone. They worry about the fire. So whenever you don't have insurance, they force place a fire only policy. That's their big concern. So it's easy to get. Depending on if you have an agent who's just taking orders and pushing out numbers, you may not have the best option. You might be able. I'll give you an example. The difference between liability of 100,000 and 500,000. I mean, that's a good conversation, especially somebody who may have kids, does a lot of entertaining, has a dog or whatever.
Yeah.
That extra 400,000 for say call it $50 a year. There's a value there.
Mhm.
And people don't think about it that way. They're just looking at it's like a commodity. They're just looking at the price.
Yeah, that's again, insurance broker. That's so valuable to be able to shop that, look at that, take all that into account. Because that's So we've talked a lot about fire zones, but it seems like it's mattering more
Yes.
than it used to. And same thing with or are you seeing the same thing? So with fire areas adding meaning more. What about flood areas? Is that mattering more? And
Not so much. I mean, there's going to be your dedicated flood zones. So like Albuquerque itself is, for the most part, we're not in a flood zone.
Mhm.
You'll have some areas by the river, right? Of course. You'll have some areas, believe it or not, in the northeast sites, like off San Mateo, by the freeway. There's some funky flood zones there. Why? There's some irrigation. I'm not too sure.
Mhm.
Parts of North Albuquerque Acres, parts off of like Tramway and Lomas area, you may see it, but it's not so much.
County, you see it like Bosque Farms.
Yeah, all of Valencia County,
Mhm.
the Bosque Farms, Las Lunas, all of Valencia counties is a flood zone.
Mhm.
We'll write a whole bunch of flood. We have a girl in my office who specializes in it. It all got regulated by the government. So the pricing's all the same. So there's not really a benefit. I mean, there's anybody, farmers, anybody who writes a flood policy, it should have about the same price. We do have a product that we can write if we write the rest of the business because it's a specialty product.
Mhm.
It's through Lloyd's of London. So it is a cheap flood that we can do. And then we'd be able to help some people in that way. especially because flood insurance in some cases can be a couple thousands of dollars, depending on the where it's at and the value, the price, property, how much insurance we need. But yeah, flood insurance, not as bad as the fire. But one positive on the fire is one of our carriers we met with 2 weeks ago, a large carrier here in town, here nationwide large carrier. They had a meeting with us because we're one of their top brokers in the state, or actually nationally, we're one of their biggest brokers. They're our biggest company that we write.
Oh, wow.
And they said they're opening up those high fire zones. There's a new product coming out that they're going to allow us. There's a home certification that people can do. And this is brand new. So it's coming out, and some of the terminology, I don't know it all yet, but there's a home ownership certification you can get. It's like a fire protection. Like, as long as you've done these things, we can write your insurance.
Wow. Love it.
So that's coming soon. I would say we will have access to that. I'm hoping within the next 60 days. And then so a lot of it's in, like the Ruidosos or the East Mountain. Those are tough areas to write.
Mm-hmm.
But there is some silver lining that's coming forward.
Oh, great. When you get that information, will you send that to me so that I can share it with my customers? Yeah, because I did.
Most definitely. Yeah.
So do you think, okay, so you hear about there was a horrible fire in LA.
Okay.
There's been storms, right? Like Florida, the hurricanes.
Okay.
Is that affecting us? The pricing?
Indirectly, yeah. Indirectly. I mean, ultimately, it's a share pool, right?
Uh-huh.
You'll have some companies got hurt worse than others. So like State Farm, I think, was really big in California, and they got, when all those fires happened, they took it really bad. Some of the carriers we write are more regional carriers. They're not quite as big as a State Farm, or, maybe not. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But they didn't quite get hit as hard. So I think the overall impact, depending on the carrier and their exposure in those areas, does trickle down like a shared cost.
Okay. So
mainly though in our own state. It's mainly going to be in our own state, but we do. You can say that there's no precautions, because I believe there is.
Yeah. So even though New Mexico has traditionally been known as a place is relatively least natural disasters in the country, I mean, it is, like you said, it's going to trickle down for sure.
Well, the hard part here, so Albuquerque metro area, we have great weather. Our worst thing we'll see sometimes is wind. A couple times every so often, maybe every couple years, 5 years, whatever, there might be a hailstorm pass through. Where we get into trouble here is other parts of the state affect us. So you go east, on the other side of the mountain, Clovis, Carlsbad, they're known for hail. So those storms come in and they wipe out that town. You'll have a whole block that's full of hail. So it's insurance out there is a lot more expensive than Albuquerque, and but the pricing does affect the whole state. So we do sometimes see increases based on things that are out of our control, even though we live in the city.
Oh, I mean, and there is. I mean, our worst weather is definitely our spring winds, and they've gotten more intense. And so, yeah, wind damages can be a thing, especially with like shingle roofs and things. But although I think shingle roofs are good roofs.
Oh, they are.
And easy to do maintenance on and repair if you have shingles blow away. And we do get hail. I mean, it's, I guess, and I didn't realize, that's something I learned today. I didn't realize that blocks would get wiped out. It must be really large hail because we get more pea hail here, right? It's kind of annoying.
Albuquerque, yes. But for some reason, eastern part of the state is very bad. And that's their hail. So for example, here in Albuquerque, a carrier might say, okay, Jennifer, on your home, we're going to do a $1,500 deductible for wind and hail. But if you're in the eastern part of the state, they might say your wind hail deductible is 2%. So 2% of your dwelling coverage. So if you have a $500,000 house, it's a $10,000 deductible for wind and hail, just because of the severity in certain parts of the state.
Okay. So that's not going to be for like, okay, it damaged my fence or blew off a few shingles. It's going to be more if a tree gets blown down and goes through the garage.
Yeah, it's more anything like out there that deductible will apply if you need the insurance and it's a wind hail claim. They call them perils, right? If it's a wind hail situation, so wind knocks something down, but they'll change it because it's more so in the eastern part of the state. Albuquerque metro area, we don't see that hardly ever.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I see what you're saying about insurance in some ways, I guess in some areas being more catastrophic now,
Yep.
coverage as opposed to the old school kind. So, from your perspective, what should buyers be thinking about when it comes to insurance? So, when should they start looking for insurance? Why do we also have contingency deadlines in our state purchase agreement? And I just hit you with 3 questions. So, what when it comes to insurance, what should we be thinking about when we go to start looking for houses?
Okay. So in the home purchasing process, in my opinion,
Mhm.
you have that insurance contingency on the purchase agreement. I don't know how I think in the past, the realtor could just put a number in there and been like, okay, you're going to make sure you get this done in, 7 days, whatever. And you just move on to your bigger, at the point, challenges, right? I got my sewer line inspection scheduled, all
Mhm.
these other things. Those seem to take a focus than an insurance contingency. It's something you want to put in there because you want to make sure it's associated. Well, what I would do is right away. Unfortunately, sometimes you don't get all the information as a homeowner from the house these days. It seems like you'll get like kind of what I know is wrong potentially within the last since I lived here. So you don't always get as much in-depth information, but I would try to find as much information as I can. Once you I would put enough time in that contingency on the insurance side of things. I'd probably put like a 2-week period in there or equal to my inspection period.
Okay.
Because it could take sometimes more information. I mean, there's been times I'll call our client or a realtor, whoever I'm working with that's on the business, and I'll just say, hey, look, there's nothing here in the market, and this is how it's impacting the rate because a 20-year-old roof is definitely going to be a lot more expensive than a 10-year-old roof, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So I would say the contingency is good because now more than ever, it's a little bit harder to get insurance because they are asking those questions. So they're looking and things for the realtors to look for when you're walking through the property. So if I'm walking a client, and I'll give you an example. This happened, and I don't really work with a lot of buyers, but I did have a buyer that was referred to me. Mm-hmm. I'm walking through the property, and it's an older home in the Northeast Heights, nice house. I went straight to the electrical panel because I'm pretty positive it was going to be a Federal Pacific panel, just because that's what they did 50, 60 years ago. A lot of them are still in working operation, but insurance won't write them because they're circuit breakers. And sometimes they're historically, there's been issues with maybe potential fires. So it's one of those not if, it's when kind of question, typically on the insurance side of things. So I see the panel there. So I just educated the client. I said, hey, this is something, the house is great. These are things, but these are something to think about. You might want to talk to, and I was not her insurance agent, but I said, this is what I know. You might want to take a look, talk to your agent, whoever you're working with, and see if they can, what their options are here. Because it's a question. Aluminum wiring, same thing. Some companies won't write aluminum wiring at all, even if it's been pigtailed. So it's just important that when they're buying the property, and Albuquerque and Northeast Heights, we have a lot of older homes. So to just good questions to ask and then more information, because the better they can inform their insurance agent, the more likely they will be able to find coverage. So I think that's an important date. I think that date should match your other contingency deadlines.
Okay.
However, they right.
Yeah, no, that's good information. I hadn't thought about it in that way, like, that need to go down that rabbit hole because it's not as easy as it used to be in the sense of you call, you get a quote, you're like, okay, that's my best quote, that's what I'm going to go with. Yeah, and now is that do I guess does that is that commonplace to ask what type of panel you have, what type of wiring you have, what type of plumbing do you have? Because and I did that's news to me. I always thought, especially if aluminum wire was pigtailed, that it wasn't an issue, but it can be with certain carriers.
It can be. So it's now it's a question that some carriers who have experienced losses are asking. So they'll want to know. So usually that's why I say that timeline's good, because when you get your home inspections, you'll be able to find out pretty much most of the stuff out. Because at the very beginning, you might not know. So if you have like a 3 to 5 day window on that contingency, but your inspections are scheduled for 7 to 10 days out, you're going to miss that deadline and it could affect your contract. That's the QB in me.
Yeah, no, this is good information. I've been 31 years and I'm always learning.
But you just don't know. So I think, but you never, to your point, I never thought about it before. I always put, default 7 days or 10 days because it was always easy. And then it kind of just depends on the house too. I mean, if it's built past 1978, it's got copper wiring because they didn't use aluminum wiring after 70. You don't have to worry about that. If it's newer than like 1960, it doesn't have a federal tax, so we don't have to worry about that. Those are the things that, I guess knowledge is power. So that as a real estate agent, the more information we have, the easier it is for us to be that professional when we're talking. And it makes that transition when they go to talk to an insurance person, just better, overall a better experience for the client. Just because they are starting to ask those questions because they're seeing different types of claims. And I've never seen anybody cancel or claim not paid because of whatever. But if you do see people get non-renewed, and then it's difficult to get insurance in the event of a claim because of that situation. So, for example, having living wiring, the underwriter changed their guidelines. Something happened, the claim still gets paid, but they're no longer going to keep you on the books. Now, when I go move on, if it's not takes that, it might be harder to second insurance.
Got it. Okay. And polybutylene and Kitech and Intran. Plumbing. Yeah. Is it true that it's really hard to get, especially polybutylene, because it's one of those spaces like Federal Pacific? It's not if, but when it's going to break down.
It's true. Both Kitech and polybutylene are not acceptable. Often fixed on that, we'll see PECs run through and they're too class. But polybutylene's a decline too. And when I say decline, it doesn't mean that you cannot find insurance. It means that you may not be able to find an equal product. So do you have standard markets? Mm-hmm. Standard markets are like your Allstate, your Liberty Mutuals, those kind of companies that everything's included. They write it on a special form, typically, meaning that everything's covered for the most part. You have a lot of built-in coverages. If you run into a scenario where they won't write your insurance because you're in a high fire zone, they won't write your insurance because you have polybutyl. They're what's called E&S markets. E&S is like excess lines. It's like a high risk product. So typically the rates are going to be double and the coverage will be half. So instead of writing it on a special form, which has a lot of coverages built in, they might write it on a basic form, or, meaning that there's a lot of exclusions and different coverages, that things that you would think are covered aren't covered, but it's a way of getting insurance. And there's also the state fair plan, which is if somebody cannot absolutely get insurance, the state has a product for them, but it's a fire only product. That's a good issue. So there's options. It's just depending on what it is.
So it's not the end of the world in the sense of, let's say, okay, I'm going into this house. I know it's got aluminum wiring, or I know it's got polybutylene pipes, usually not the same house because different eras.
Right.
But, and you're like, okay, well, I know that my uncle's a plumber and my uncle's going to take care of this in 6 months. So I can go ahead and just get this, this not the best coverage, and then go get the plumbing replaced, and then I can change my coverage.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's fixes. There's Band-Aids.
So tell me about this. Is credit score taken into account when an insurance company is giving us a quote?
Not the FICO score. So some people say I have a 700 or 800 credit score. We don't see that at all. But not us, the carriers do run an algorithm that has a soft hit. So you won't see it on your credit as an actual inquiry, but they do use, they call it a soft hit to factor. So credit does. And there's different tiers. So depending on the carrier, they rate them, like 1 to 15, or they all have different ratings. But it'll say, it takes that into a percentage of it. So yes, it does. But we never see somebody's credit score. We don't know if they've got good or bad credit. We don't know any of that. It's just a factor that's used on the backside for rating.
Okay. So usually if your credit is decent enough to get a loan, a home loan, usually then your credit's not going to be that big of a factor when getting insurance.
Correct.
It's going to be more like if you're doing like owner financing, like we have in New Mexico, real estate contracts, things like that, where if your credit may not be quite as good, your insurance may be a little higher. Yep. Okay.
Only very rarely will you see it, but sometimes they'll do what's called a hard stop, where they'll want more information before they'll proceed. So it happens very rarely, but it's got to be a pretty bad situation.
Okay. When does your insurance go into an effect? Like when you're buying a house, and also when should a seller cancel their homeowner's insurance?
A seller should cancel after funding.
Okay.
So not close.
After they get the money.
After they get the money. Once that transaction's happened, they can always get backdated. So I would always wait a day or two after close. When it's funded, we got the money, then you send and this is a big deal. Most people don't realize that they have to cancel their policy. They'll think that the mortgage company does it. We've seen people sold my house a year ago. We don't know that they sold the house. So the one extra step is, as a seller, I wait till it funds, because anything, in these days, anything could happen. so I wait till, a day or two after it funds and it records and you got your money. Then I would call my insurance person. Usually they'll want something in writing, say, hey, I just sold my house. They'll say, send me your closing statement or something. And they should backdate it to the day that you closed. But it's just as a precaution. As a homeowner buying that property, I always like to clarify with the lender, because the lender has their date of their target close. So before we issue, some carriers don't let us change the date. Most of them do, or we have to rewrite the policy. So I try to get it as close to the close date as possible. So I'll talk to the lender and say, hey, and I will see, because I have the MLS access, I can see, well, the closing isn't until like the 30th. The mortgage company wants the insurance issued on the 15th. I don't want to have them paying for something that they don't need. So I try to close that gap and say, hey, what's your real date? And I work with a lot of lenders in town, so it's never an issue. But we just have to ask those questions. Otherwise, you get an order in, you process the order, and they may have never closed.
So so a buyer's insurance kicks in is the whatever day that you've set it up, like which is usually closing day. It's not when it records. It's not. It's
right.
Okay. So once a deed records in the county, and that becomes the buyer's property, and it's no longer the seller's property. But you think they should still go ahead and wait, because they can backdate it to go ahead and wait till they have money in hand and give it an overlap.
Well, once the title company says refunded, I think you're good.
Okay.
At that point, they've already recorded.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just some people will call and say, we're supposed to close on this day. I'm going to cancel my policy on Monday. But I'm going to cancel they'll call on Monday. We're closing on Thursday. Can you cancel my policy effective Thursday? And then it never closes. That's the challenge that we have. So we always say, wait till you close, and it's funded.
Yeah,
and
that's sellers don't do anything with your insurance until after closing, until you hear from me.
Yep. Once I tell you your money's on its way, then take care of your insurance and cancel.
Yeah. And don't forget to give your address to your mortgage company, so then they can refund what's in your escrow account.
Yes, because that goes to you.
Yeah.
And so does your refund for your home insurance goes to you as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't go to the mortgage company. So you'll have, if you have just paid in March and you're closing in April, then you'll get that. They pay the whole year up front. So that's money that, you'd be surprised. A lot of people just forget about it.
Yeah. That's one thing I was trying to mind.
Actually, but they just don't remember that one step. Someone's so excited they bought the house, someone's so excited they sold the house, they forget about the insurance.
And there's so much to do and so much going on, changing utilities and moving, all the things. So is bundle and save a real thing with your car and your homeowner's insurance? And is that something you can handle for folks?
Oh, most definitely. We try to bundle as much as possible. Bundling within the carrier. One could say that you're bundled with us, but you're not. Because we're the agent, we write so many. We don't have your auto written with your home. That's a bundle. And that doesn't always work to be the best. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So the carriers for bundling, you will give you anywhere between a 15 and 20 to 25% discount for bundling the insurance. But in some cases, it's cheaper to separate them. Yours exact. This was the best auto rate. We were able to save you quite a bit on the auto. If I put it here, it may not be as significant saving. So sometimes it doesn't make sense. So that's, as a broker, it's nice because we have a lot of clients that we have all their lines, but we don't necessarily have them with the same company because it was better for them to keep it separate. So most cases, we try to bundle on everything. But if we can't, then we'll find a home. We're not going to just die on that store and say, hey, we're only going to bundle you here. We'll give you options.
Okay. That's good. So let's say if someone's in an accident or you take advantage of a windshield chip coverage, is that going to affect your car and your homeowner's insurance rates? And the window chip, I'm asking for a friend.
So you got to look at your policy. Your auto policy, comprehensive coverage is where you're going to have your windshield and your windshield chip coverage. If there's some. So it's going to fall under that comprehensive. When you have some people call it, say, I want full coverage. Well, some people believe that, comp and collision is full coverage. Some people say, no, that's not full coverage. I want comp, collision, rental, roadside assistance, all that stuff. So it's a very loose term. But if you have comp and collision, comprehensive protects you from weather-related claims, theft, glass, those sort of things is comprehensive. Collision is fixing your car if the accident is your fault. So I ran into somebody. It's my fault. I have $5,000 worth of damage to my car. Deductible fix my car. Claims don't impact you as badly as an at-fault accident because it's something typically that's usually out of your control and add up. So what you want to do is glass, for example. If you have a $500 or $1,000 deductible for comprehensive and collision, that means anything under $1,000, you're not going to have coverage. So a chip that might cost $60, I would just pay in my pocket.
Okay.
People can do glass coverage. So we have glass coverage available. You can purchase that. It's an extra premium. And some companies will say, okay, we'll look at the windshield. I mean, my vehicle windshields, it's like a $2,000 windshield these days. It's crazy because of all the sensors and all that stuff built in. So if I have that same $1,000 deductible and I need to do windshield, I pay $1,000, they pay $1,000 to replace it. Or I could add glass coverage. Adding glass coverage would mean that my insurance rate would be higher. Some cases, it could be $200 to $300 a year more expensive. So depending on how you may or may not use it, but it covers not just the windshield, it covers all glass. And some companies write it with $0 deductible. Some companies write it with a $50 deductible, but it's an option. Or some people say, I want a $0 deductible for I don't like that, but I just wouldn't suggest that, but that'd be whatever. Now, they can add up though. I've had clients in the past who had a lot of high-end vehicles and high-end windshields, and they were averaging 2 to 3 windshields a year.
Oh, wow.
So the company said, hey, we're not going to cancel you, but we're no longer going to let you have glass coverage. So those sort of things, it does go into effect on underwriting. And I just look at insurance these days. Well, sometimes it's difficult to get. So the more claims you have, the more activity, the less insurable you are. And so I use it for the big stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Especially for us that drive a lot, and the windshield thing, happens. I probably get a ding a year at least.
yeah. Dings, I'd probably, because you could probably get it. I would just pay for I don't glass coverage. I have a guy that I go to for windshields. So, and then I leased my current car, so that they included the glass coverage for that. So if I decide to buy the car, then I might change my tune on a $2,000 windshield, but I tried to not use it.
Okay. So if we need a windshield guy, call you. Got it. So we kind of covered what a seller could do to like help a buyer out and to make their property more attractive now that we're going to be paying attention to those things. So it's going to be like, and a seller may not be able to do anything about their Federal Pacific, their plumbing, their wiring, but know that, it may be beneficial to do a credit to a buyer, but they can definitely get I'm assuming, right? It's a little bit easier to cut limbs away from roofs, maybe take care of that crack in that sidewalk, or not the raised crack. What about peeling paint? Do insurance companies care about paint on the exterior?
Not as much as an FHA loan.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be an issue if they go out there and do an inspection, they might note it. But for the most part, they're looking roof. They're looking, yes, it could be an issue. I haven't seen it as often as the market seems to soften up a little bit. And it depends on what it is. So sometimes peeling paint, I would say it depends on where it's at and what it is. So for example, if you have peeling paint on the bottom of the perimeter of the home and no gutters, typically it's going to be rain dripping. If you have a flat roof home and the parapets top part are bulging and painting, then you have a leak. So, then you have maintenance. So it depends on where it's at, I would say, and things I'd point out. But I would just use that as, the gutter situation may not be as important to somebody as the parapet situation. So it's all based on, and anything that's obvious and big could be an issue. So if it's a small chip paint, no big deal. If it's if you have water separation in the stucco, bigger issue. So dodging the bullet by saying case by case.
Well, true. And it is so much just case by case and carrier probably. So anything that we haven't covered, you wish buyers or sellers understood about the process of buying and selling when it comes to insurance?
I would just, make sure that you understand the coverage that you have. The biggest gripe you see about insurance is, oh my gosh, I've been paying for 20 years and I've never used it and I got declined because of that.
Mhm.
I blame the agent on that because they never explained what the client had. We encourage clients to either come in the office or speak to us on the phone. We try to touch every renewal, meaning that when a customer's client renewal is coming up, it's not always great news, but we try to either thank them for their business if it's good news, or we tell them what's going on,
Mhm.
or we'll try and pre-shop it for them, but understand what they have. And so we always ask for, if you called me, I think when we did your insurance,
Mhm.
send me a copy of your current insurance. I have no control over the prices that come through. We have zero. And there's things we can look at, deductibles and things like that, but the price is the price typically. But I want to make sure that not only am I saving you money, but I'm not cutting your coverage. I'm either matching it or getting you better coverage. So I would say to have that relationship, like, some people have relationships with attorneys, some people have relationships with their realtors, some people have relationships with their accountant. I think it's equally important to understand what you're paying for and understand what you have to have that same relationship with your insurance agent. Anybody can go online and buy a quote. It doesn't mean that just because the price is cheap, you're getting the best coverage.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's one thing. That's one reason I love you is because it's so you're just always there. You're always returning the texts, the calls, the emails, and everything. And another thing that I really appreciate about the way you work is like when you are calling to say, "Oh my gosh, you're now in the fire area and this is happening," but I've got a solution. I've got solutions for you, right? You always come up, and that's always easier to take than like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" You have it. So,
Yes, we
like,
try to. We try to be on top of it. I appreciate your business and your referrals and this opportunity to speak with you. Thank you very much.
oh, I've actually there's a couple things you told me that I was like, okay, I need to change that in my practice. So thank you. So we're going to bring
I'm
it
glad.
around to Albuquerque. I know that you're short on time. So just want to know what do you think makes Albuquerque a unique place to live, especially when we look at through the lens of homeownership and risk?
And Albuquerque, well, we have great weather. Really. I mean, we have great weather. You know, we did a lot of traveling over the last couple of years because my son was a college wrestler. So he was on the East Coast. And, you find places you like. It's just always nice to come home. Yes, you're coming home to not green for the most part. It's a little dusty, but it's a good place. It's an easy place to make friends, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It's an easy place to do business.
Mhm.
It's a weather you can't beat. I mean, unless you like to ski or you love the snow, unfortunately, you can go places for that aren't too far away.
Yeah, you can drive
But
to it.
yeah, you can drive to it. But Albuquerque itself, sometimes it'll get a bad rap for whatever. But every city does have the same challenges. It's just whatever. But I think it's just an easy place to live, and it's a fun place to do business.
Is there a place in Albuquerque that feels special to you, like meaningful? Like, do you have a favorite neighborhood, a restaurant, a coffee shop? Like, what shouldn't people miss? Like, what's your hidden gem?
Umbrellas Coffee House. So my son and I go to breakfast there every Saturday morning. That's our little spot. So like they're chilly. So, but we have our little spots. But I like the Northeast Heights. I grew up in the Northeast Heights. The neighborhood I live in as a kid, I always wanted to live in. Thinking, so I'm happy where I'm at as far as proximity, location. It is an older house. I do have aluminum wiring, but at the end of the day, I like the Heights. The West Side for me is a little too busy. Having grown up here, there's a lot going on, a lot of nice stuff, and I have a lot of friends, a lot of people I know that just love it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather drive to it than drive in it. But
yeah, if
that's
you
just
work
me.
traditional business hours and you work on the east side, traffic is getting.
It's tough. So for me, I'm spoiled. I don't have to take the freeway to work. So I just, for me, that's what I like. I like the Northeast Heights, and I like, Burles Coffee House.
Yeah, I used to live. My first home actually was in Borales, and I haven't been to the coffee shop in years. I'm like, oh yeah. So, what do you hope to see for Albuquerque in the next 10 to 20 years?
I'd like to see a plan they could stick to as far as leadership, community leadership, not to get political, but whether we've had that not great on both sides. I think it's because we have a lot to offer here as far as growth, opportunity, the labs. It's a wonderful place it's an easy place to work. It's a good place to make a name for yourself. You can I would say the sky's the limit as far as business goes, depending on what you want to do. But I think sometimes the leadership fails to look at what people really need and really want. And I think that's probably on a whole scale, but as far as Albuquerque goes, I think we've just seen a lot of it last probably 10 years. It's been tough. So, I mean, I think I would like to see a plan that we can stick to and maybe some growth and development in those plans instead of throwing money at bad situations, maybe fix the bad situation.
Yeah. In our mayoral elections are nonpartisan, but I've noticed too, it's become very apparent that what parties and stuff, which is a little sad, I think, because it is better, I think, just to judge on okay, what are your ideas? What do you believe in? All right. Yeah. Last question. With somebody coming into Albuquerque visiting, what shouldn't they miss?
Shouldn't they miss in Albuquerque? Tram's really neat.
Yeah.
If you're in Albuquerque specific. If you like bike riding, I mean, the Bosque Trail is really, that's fun stuff to do. And I'm not into museums and stuff, but we do have all that kind of thing here. Food is definitely, I think we have some great food.
Special.
And Santa Fe is worth the trip.
Yeah.
It's worth the trip.
For sure. Well, thank you. This has been really helpful. I've learned a lot. Like I said, there's a couple of things, I'm going to change in my practice and start doing differently. So I always appreciate you. So it's one of those things too. I think insurance is it's better to understand it than just go, okay, well, I'm going to handle it later. So your perspective has really helped. And I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the way you take care of my customers and the way you take care of me. And so thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
I appreciate it as well. Thank you for all the years.
So I want to thank everybody for listening. I'm Jennifer Wilson with Living Albuquerque. And until next time, live well, live Burkey. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Living Albuquerque. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and share it with someone who loves Albuquerque or is thinking about calling it home. Until next time, live well, live Burkey.